Hi, I'm Nafpreet Palmer, part of the Shift Token Finance community. My role is Head of FI Partnerships, and one of the areas I really look after is our Fintech Champions community. It's a community of FIs that are interested in creating some knowledge and awareness of the fintechs, but also support from our consultants with any sort of fintech partnership needs. Today, we're joined by the lovely Andreea, who's part of the Fintech Champions community as well, and kindly coming here to talk about your experience of the community. So lovely to have you, Andreea. And tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey and how you found an interest in fintechs.
Yeah, thank you so much, Navi, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. So a little bit more about myself. My background is in consulting. So I've done international consulting for 15 years in various areas, mostly working in strategy, technology, with large organizations, and more recently have been a director of data strategy and transformation in the banking sector. So I've had the opportunity to work all throughout my career with so many big companies, small companies, all throughout in different levels of maturity, right? And I wanted to take all of that and bring it to a space where I can contribute to really improve the fintech ecosystem overall, and also to improve the partnerships between banks and fintechs as well. So that's in a nutshell.
Amazing. So you've worked with smaller organizations and you've worked with some of the larger organizations and, had really, large roles and a lot of responsibility under yourself. But how did you sort of find that, area of fintechs being something that banks needed to sort of move forward with the times? What was it about fintechs that really sort of captured your interest?
It's really interesting because for me, especially as a strategist, I always say that innovation happens in small pockets, right? In small places, places where we really want to respond rapidly to a challenge. And fintechs are really well equipped to do that. So they come up with really fresh ideas. They want to understand the customer better, and they really put some good products out there, right? In terms of either products or services. And that's what they bring to the table. They bring innovation, they bring new ways of working, agility to respond, that attitude of let's do it, let's go and do it. Definitely, we definitely need fintechs in the ecosystem. And on the other side, from the banking perspective, there is that level of maturity, right? There's a solid risk management processes in place and frameworks, which we should have because this is the financial sector, right? So we can't get anything wrong. We really need to protect the customer, right? And then the procurement process is challenging because it has to be solid as well. So I know this is something that fintechs always complain about, but it needs to be solid, right? And then banks also have obviously the tradition and the history, and they cater to a large number of customers, right? So when you combine the two and the value that both parties bring to the table, I think there's the potential for value is tremendous there.
It's amazing you say that because I also feel the same. I feel like, the fintechs are there with, coming up with the new ideas, being very innovative, but lack that sort of, maybe that structure, the regulatory side of a business, more funding, etc., the capital. And that's what the bigger sort of businesses have. So that partnership between the two seems like the perfect fit for growth on both sides, really.
Yeah. I was talking to someone yesterday, actually, and they were saying from a fintech perspective, it will kill you to work with a bank, but it will also kill you not to work with a bank. So I really like that because it comprises exactly the paradox that we have here, right? And I think for fintechs, they really need to define for themselves, why do we want this partnership with a bank? Is it because we want to raise our profile? Is it because our product and services are really catered to the needs of the bank? Is it because we're looking, just because working with a bank will attract additional funding for us, right? So you really need to define as a fintech, what's the goal of that partnership? Because as I said, going through the procurement process with banks is never easy, and there's a solid reason why it's like that, and it should be like that. But then you really need to define for yourself as a small fintech and a startup, why do you want to do it?
Yeah, exactly. It's about that problem solution fit as well, isn't it? It's like, what's the problem you're here to solve? Does your solution sort of fit that problem? But equally, will your product sell? That's something that's, huge. Like you mentioned, the procurement process is massive at banks. sometimes fintechs have like the best solution and tick all the boxes, but they're just not right for the organization.
Yeah. You shouldn't just sell to a bank just because you have to sell to a bank. So that's a challenge we need to pose to fintechs in general. So when they present the product, is it really for a bank? And I do this all the time, actually, when I talk to fintechs founders. Who is this from? For actually, is it really for a bank? Why do you think it's for a bank? Do you actually have another customer segment that you didn't think about? So it's just posing the right question. I think it's important.
Amazing, yeah. Part of the reason we have our Fintech Champions community is, also to give back to fintechs. Our Shift Open Finance community has over 300 fintechs within it. We have this smaller community within it, which you're in, which, you obviously in your role have had a lot of exposure to fintechs, understand the need for businesses partnering with fintechs. We have other members also that are here to sort of increase that knowledge and awareness from the scratch. So that's something our community provides. And then along with the partnership piece, when I talk about, giving back, some of our fintechs like spending some time with you, not from a partnership perspective, but just to get your sort of expertise and knowledge on, is our solution fit for purpose here? Do you feel like that's an area that you are, well equipped to sort of give back, given your role?
Yes, and also that's the motivation. That's why I'm in the community and that's why I do it. That's one, because it's twofold here and it goes both ways, right? So given my background in consulting, given the fact that I've worked with so many organizations, different styles, different markets, different sectors, and now my focus in banking in particular, I'm in a place where I can actually give somewhat proper advice and also ask the right questions. And I'm always happy to do that. But I think it goes both ways. And this is what I want to emphasize, that I'm getting a lot of it out as well, right? As a strategist, and this is my area, I'm always looking at horizon scanning. What are the future trends? And it's pretty much my job is, what's the future in finance, in banking in general? And how do I make that a reality now for the bank, right? So if I'm not well connected in terms of what's happening in pockets of innovation, what is it that the fintech ecosystem is working on, then I'm not going to be able to be really good at my job. And I want to be good at my job, right? So I'm getting a lot back. I'm getting a lot in terms of understanding how the trends are changing. I'm getting a lot in terms of understanding new ways of working as well. And how do you foster innovation? How do you do a lot with not that many resources? So all of those things are really valuable for me.
And where you've, spoken with a lot of fintechs and, as you said, part of your role is to understand the pockets of innovation that are out there for you to do your job really well. When we talk about, the vast amount of solutions that fintechs have today within finance, all great and all moving finance forward, what sort of things do you see as the trends today that, this is what the industry needs at the moment? And, so these type of fintechs are doing really great, for example, in meeting those needs.
I'm going to shift your question a little bit because everyone is talking about AI. So I think it's definitely that's going to be. So I'm not going to talk necessarily about the technology in terms of future trends because we know it's there.
Yeah.
I think I would like to address some future trends that maybe we don't talk a lot necessarily. And for me, a big one is generational changes. The customer is changing, right? Obviously, young customers don't have the same needs as different generations, but fintechs are in a position where they're actually more equipped to deal with those customers. So I think that's a trend that banks can embrace a bit more, and that's the value of partnerships as well here. And understanding the younger customer, that's a big one for me. And also because the attitude of younger customers is quite different towards money and wealth in general. And you also have a lot of interest in everything that's climate, social, and everything else that we deal with in the world right now, right? So we can't just look at money and wealth in isolation and money management in general. We have to look at everything, right? So focus on the customer. It's a big one, and also understanding that the customer is changing. And I think for me, another trend that's really good to look at is cultural changes within the organization. We've seen leadership changes quite a lot, and we've seen how that's impacting as well but cultural changing, ways of working, how do you invest in talent differently? So that's going to be a focus, and it needs to be a focus, right? It's more approaching it from the area of soft skills and embedding that, because you have tech coming in and disruptive AI and everything else, but soft skills will remain a big focus, right? So then you need to change the way you work and the way you grow talent as well.
That's such a good point, because, partnerships and working with vendors from an FI perspective is, a huge step for their business, especially for businesses who have not done this before. And more than the tech, they look at, is it a cultural fit? This is a long-term sort of partnership we're looking at here. Can we actually work with this person? So for fintechs to be able to consider that when we're going into that first sort of proposal meeting, and also on a long-term, even when their solution's more, BAU and managed services, like, is it easy for the FI to flag an issue to them? Or, do they have that sort of relationship long-term? Such a huge factor, which I don't think gets spoken about often, actually. So I'm really glad you sort of brought that up as, a trend, that's something that fintech should look out for.
Yeah, I mean, in general, we don't necessarily always just buy products, services, and so on. We buy the funder, right? And we buy people and the relationship and how we work together, and the fit is so important. And I think as well, if fintech can focus on fostering those relationships, not, and I see this quite a bit, there's a close relationship with the innovation team in banks in general, but that's not enough, right? It's easy to focus there because those people, they speak the same language as you, they really understand you, you can talk for days and everything is fine, right? But you also need to bring with you on the journey, for sure. You need the procurement team from the beginning, day one, day zero, as soon as possible. And you also need the risk function with you from the beginning. So the more fintechs are equipped to build strong relationships across the bank, across business functions, I think the better the outcome will be in general.
Often what I see in my role with FIs when I'm sort of facilitating these partnership conversations, there's a lot of interest from the FI in the beginning around, getting really excited about the solutions out there, really want to partner, but they have one bad experience with a vendor, and that puts them sort of 10 steps back with in moving forward and taking their business forward and partnering with another vendor for something better, because they feel like, we've not really had a great experience here. We don't want to actually put our toes in that ever again. We're going to build everything in-house or not do it at all until we absolutely have to. What's your sort of message to those businesses or people in those sort of roles? Like, how do you overcome that?
You really touched on two things there. So one is the forever conversation of building in-house versus buy. And obviously, I think we would need another day just to talk about that one. But I would say you definitely need to explore the solutions out there. You need to put it high on the agenda in terms of partnership with fintechs, because the innovation comes from there. There's no question about it. And we're not saying that innovation can't come from in-house. It absolutely can. But why wouldn't you go for solutions that are already out there and just see how you can work on the integration and the fit and so on? And then in terms of bad experiences, I would say that's not necessarily just for fintech. So the bad experience didn't happen just because that provider was a fintech, just because you can have bad experience with vendors regardless of their nature. So I've had that. Everyone has had that in their experience. So I wouldn't necessarily say the reason is because they were a fintech. It's just in general. But then the question really becomes, how can I improve my internal processes, especially in terms of procurement, vetting vendors, the whole RFP process? How can I improve that to make sure I don't make the same mistakes, or I improve the experience for next time? So it's a learning journey, and just acknowledging that, I think it's really critical here. Being willing to do so, right?
Yeah, that is so true. I think, for any sort of, role you're in, a bad experience doesn't necessarily relate to a fintech or its solution. It could be the person you're working with. It could be, something that you hadn't sort of considered before when you were doing that sort of onboarding, etc.
It might even be the entire procurement process. You don't know what it is. It's just you really need to look at the entire journey and optimize it for next time, right? It's just the iteration of it.
Exactly, yeah. In terms of your, contribution to the Fintech Champions community, you've been one of our sort of earlier members to join and have been around for quite a few months now. You touched on it earlier where, it's quite important for you in your role to have that knowledge of the fintech ecosystem as a strategist. You need to know the sort of opportunities that are out there. But what else do you sort of take away from the community or, enjoy as yourself being a part of it? And what message would you have to others who aren't necessarily part of the community at the moment and why they should sort of join?
Yeah, so I joined last year. I don't remember exactly when last year, but I really enjoyed it. It's been fun, right? And I really enjoy the connection and the relationships you build with people and the conversations we're having and the questions I get to ask and the question I am being asked, right? So I really enjoy this exchange. For me, it's extremely valuable. And I think outside of my job, it just puts me in a place where I can think differently. I can apply more creativity, which is great. It's really great. And also we're having a lot of fun. So I really enjoy that too. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so glad that you're enjoying being part of the community. Our sort of mission with this is to, have fun along the way as well. This is a safe space to sort of ask questions that you have, speak to fintechs, build your network, but also, learn and grow along the way on both ends. So exactly. That's the fun side of it. And we do lovely events as well, which is a huge sort of bonus, I would say. But no, it was really lovely to have you. And thank you so much for coming along and chatting to us.